finally getting around to doing some much needed maintenance on Grunt. Y'all stick around. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Clint. TJs have been around a long time, since about 1997, so they're getting some age on them. Not everybody's building badass rock crawlers with them. A lot of people still have some really nice TJs that they even daily drive, but a lot of times they're just sitting in their garage and they take them out on nice summer afternoons, and that's fine. But you still got to maintain them. Just doing our routine oil changes and lubing and all that stuff, I noticed there's a lot of things that we need to take care of, especially if she's going to continue to pick up her level of off-roading. But one thing for sure is the friggin' bump stops are disintegrated. They're gone. There should be a bump stop right here. There's not. It's dry rotted. There's a piece of it right there. Look at that. It's just dry rotted and there's nothing left. I've already replaced the driver's side. That's what it should look like. And we got a nice shiny new Fox 2.0 shock too. Alright, first thing you're going to need to do is obviously jack your Jeep up. Put jack stands behind the axle. Usually, I put mine behind the lower control arm bracket because you're going to want that axle at full droop. That's going to help you get that spring out when you get ready to put the new bump stop in. You're going to want to disconnect your shock too. Another thing you're going to want to do is take your brake caliper off and hang it up somewhere out of the way. That is, unless you've got extended brake lines, because the amount of droop it's going to take, it's going to stretch those brake lines out. You don't want that. So we got the caliper hung up. 2 bolts on the back side. They're a 13 millimeter. Alright, so one of the tricks I've been using, and it's not really a trick, it doesn't take rocket science to figure it out, but when you're dealing with springs, trying to get enough axle droop to get your springs out, what I do is jack up the opposite side that I need to get the spring out of. So I got the driver's side jacked up as far as it'll go. The passenger side is drooped as far as it's going to go, and I still can't get that spring out. If you still have your stock springs, using that method, you should be able to get that spring out. But with a lifted Jeep, the springs are longer, takes a little bit more. But I got a solution for that. Alright, I got the spring out. As you can see, what I ended up using was spring compressors. I hate using those things. They can be extremely dangerous, but I've used them enough times that I know the precautions to take, and my word of advice is, if you're going to use them, fine, but when you get the spring out, be very gentle with it and set it someplace away from you so it's not rolling around and you kick it or something. Those springs are under a lot of pressure, so if one of those compressors gives away, could be a bad day. So just be careful. Alright, so what I found on the other side was, see, if you try to chip it all out, it's going to take forever. Take you a pry bar and you'll see indentions on this housing. So try to get your pry bar up, lined up with one of those indentions, and then just pry it out. And you should get enough of it that it comes out in a pretty good piece. Or not. There it goes. That's what's left of the bump stop. Now, you might be tempted to take your new bump stop and press it up in there and think you're good to go. You might very well be if you've got stock springs. If you've got a lifted Jeep with taller springs, that ain't gonna work. Which direction did I pull it out? Yeah, I guess it came out this way. Now there is a guide stop right here on this part of the frame that's where your spring goes. The end of the spring has to fit in there. So you can see what I've done here. I've got the bump stop just sitting down here on the bottom plate, and I'm going to release the pressure on these spring compressors, and then we'll have to work it up there by hand. And it's not too difficult. You saw me before. You can push it up in there by hand. So that's what we got to do. Now that you got the spring back in place, let's get this bump stop and just work it back up through here until you get it in the housing. Now, another thing too is because you've got so much droop on here, your spring's going to be cockeyed. So that's normal. Don't wig out if you think, oh, my spring's crooked. Because once you get it jacked back up and the tires and wheels on it, it'll be fine. There. There we go. Now the bump stop's in place. Spring's back on. Good to go. Now you can take your new shock or your old shock, whichever one. Stick it up through that hole right there. Take your bushing down and your resting plate on top of that, and you can put your nut on. Now this is your first time messing with Fox shocks. When you take it out of the box, it's going to have a band on it keeping it compressed. When you cut that band off of it, it's going to expand. These shocks are stiff, but you can do it by hand. So kind of compress it until it gets down there in place, semi-close. Now I've got to go let that other side back down because it's at such an angle, it's not square. Then you can take your bolts you took out of your other shocks. Get your nuts back on them. This one on the bottom, the front one on the bottom, it's kind of a pain. It's hard to get to. The nut on the bottom side. So all the shocks are on. Got the new bump stops on. So now I'm doing some wiring. About 6 months ago, M come running in the house. Man, we got an electrical fire in Grunt. Oh crap. So we're running out there, and it's what I thought it was. It was the toggle switch for her pod lights. And at the time there was on our old bumper, if you'll remember, we had a 20-inch light bar on that bumper, so it was all wired together on one switch. And So I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. So I got to looking around and looking at all the wiring, and dude, there wasn't a fuse, there wasn't a relay one on that dude. It was all friggin' hot wired. So I was like, all right, well, that's something we're going to have to deal with. And it just had, you know, a regular old generic toggle switch. She didn't like that anyway. Well, on the TJs, they all have those switch blanks down by the ashtray, but there's no switches. I think Rubicons might have had switches there, but you know, this is an '01. This is before Rubicons even came out, so I don't know why they had switch blanks there. Well, anyway, got to looking around online and found a company that makes rocker switches for those spots, and they look like this. Yeah, so it's got spots, rock lights, and roof lights, which of course we're not going to have roof lights, but anyhow, they've got a light on and stuff, and they fit right in that spot. So I'm in the process of putting them in now. They are by, who is this company? This company is Gold Coast Distributing, and I think we got these on eBay or Amazon One. I will have a link to these if you are interested in putting some rocker switches on your TJ. So now I just gotta put a wiring harness together with the relay and fuse and all that crap and wire it up. Alright, everything's all wired up, the interior is put back together, and here's how the switches look. They've got a pretty good feel to them, so hopefully they'll last a good long while. Well, we're all done working on Grunt. I told you all we had some TJ stuff coming up, and it wasn't a step-by-step tutorial on everything we did, but Grunt's got 4 brand new Fox Performance Series 2.0 monotube shocks, new bump stops in the front, and a whole lot of wiring. Those switches were a really nice addition. If they last for any length of time at all, I'm going to be real happy with them. My problem with all that was whoever wired those lights previously, they knew what they were doing as far as electrical and current and grounding and all that stuff. That was pretty sharp. But to just have the switch as your only break point, that's shady, man. Everybody sees those pictures on Facebooks and new Jeeps burning up on the beach or burning up in the trail, and that kind of stuff is how that happens. You don't wire anything to your Jeep without a relay and a fuse. That's just, you're taking a huge risk there. It's a whole lot easier to replace a dollar fuse than it is a friggin' Jeep. So we got that done, and Mama's going to be happy with those switches, and my mind's going to be at ease. I'm not going to worry about it, that switch burning up and Jeep catching on fire. Y'all remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Till the next time, keep the shiny side up. Jeep on.